I haven't been here in a while. I forget. Judas, who betrayed him, also knew the place because Jesus often met there with his disciples.
The leading priests and Pharisees had given Judas a contingent of Roman soldiers and temple guards to accompany him. Now with blazing torches, lanterns, and weapons, they arrived at the olive grove.
Jesus fully realized all that was going to happen to him, so he stepped forward to meet them. "Who are you looking for?" he asked.
They answered him, "Jesus of Nazareth." Jesus saith unto them, "I am he." And Judas also, which betrayed him, stood with them.
Now when he said to them, "I am he," they drew back and fell to the ground.
No, you're good. Then he asked them again, "Who is that you're seeking?" "Jesus of Nazareth," they said.
"I told you that I am he," Jesus said, "and since I am the one you want, let the others go."
He did this to fulfill his own statement. "I did not lose a single one of those you have given me."
Verse 10, right?
Yes, sir.
Yeah. Then Simon Peter, having a sword, drew it, and smote the high priest's servant, and cut off his right ear. The servant's name was Malchus.
So Jesus said to Peter, "Put your sword into the sheath. Shall I not drink the cup which my Father has given me?"
All right. So as we're reading this, what do you notice about like the situation, like how Jesus is reacting, and what do you think, Josiah?
Well, one thing I think was pretty interesting is how they asked where he was, and they said he was, and they kind of like went back. And I see what Peter did. When they went to go take him, he stood up and went to protect Jesus.
Mm-hmm.
But later on in the verses, you're going to see what God said about him cutting off the servant's ear.
Yeah. What do you think, Robyn?
I'm not sure yet.
Not sure? Efren?
I'm just, what is it called? Let me think of a good word. I would say I find it interesting how he's still trying to uphold the preservation of life to protect God's children, since everyone is, just because they're trying to like kind of kill him.
Yeah. Mr. JJ.
Yeah, I think the thing that's striking me is first the presence of the high priest, right? That this event that is happening is so, put it this way, Jesus is such a threat to the principalities, to the powers that be, that the high priest himself during Passover is the one, according to John, is the one that goes to meet Jesus, right? You would think this is a Friday night, presumably. If this is Passover, the Jewish people should be celebrating the Passover in their homes. They should be preparing for the Sabbath, as the custom is. But Jesus is so important and such a threat that the high priest himself is the one that is asking Jesus all of these questions. And even that, right, even with all this power and this privilege, right, Jesus still is affirming, like you said, that these people don't know what they're doing, right? He says that later on when he's crucified, like, "Forgive them, Father, they don't know what they're doing," right? The servant is just a servant, right? He's just a guy. But hey, we can, Jesus still says, like, I'm still going to heal this guy because no one knows what they're really doing.
Yeah. And like through this like big event, like you can see that there's so much important, like you said, that the high priest was there, but Jesus seems to still be in control in the situation. And like, how do you think he's in control in the situation? Josiah?
Well, he's being calm, that's one thing.
Yeah.
And he's not like
Most definitely.
all over the place. He's just answering them.
Yeah, there's like a serenity about like his responses and the way he just carried himself.
Mm-hmm. He's because obviously you can't really tell tone from text a lot of the time, but he's calmly asserting himself in a way that's not demanding, but his presence is felt through his words.
And I feel like he's doing that throughout the entire gospel. Not once does he force anybody or use words to kind of like make things one-sided. He's like, he gives you a choice, and he's very smart about the way he picks and chooses his words. He's so gentle and so merciful. And so like one thing I noticed was that this happened in the garden, the Grove of Olives, this garden that the disciples, Jesus would go with to pray and to get away from like the outside. So this was like a safe place for them per se. And so it's crazy how like this safe place for them, for the Son of Man, is still somewhere where he got infiltrated and just absolutely just like pressed and confronted, like there's so many places like even it could happen in the church, like somebody could come in and press you or like try and like say your beliefs are not this or this and try and argue with you, yet you have to be like Jesus and continue to be patient and like show mercy, right?
I mean, we forget, like, Jesus says at some point in the Gospels, right, the Son of Man has no place to lay his head, right? And so if we say, as Christians, we say, well, we want to be like Jesus, and that includes not having a place to stay,
Yeah.
right? That includes not having always a safe place and a place of quiet. That means that, like Jesus, we're going to have moments where our faith is tested, right? The same way that Jesus's was, if we really mean, what's that WWJD? What would Jesus do, right? Like, it's the same thing, right? If we truly mean what would, like, we would be like Jesus, do what Jesus does, then that means that we won't have a place to stay all the time. We won't have a place to lay our heads. We won't have a safe space.
And knowing that, I feel like we have to decide whether walking with Jesus is as important and worth something that we're willing to put aside those things. And I believe myself that it's definitely something way more important and worth the while of going through those troubles,
Mm-hmm.
And so so Peter goes on, what does he do? He slashes the high priest servant's ear. What's so what's so typical about his reaction, Robyn?
I think that even though he's so close to God and he was a disciple, that he still managed to like injure someone. I feel like that's interesting how even like the disciples still had their mess ups.
Yeah.
And like he just reacted out of like, I guess, not anger, but as like if he was disrespecting God.
Yeah.
So he wanted to punish him in a way.
Exactly.
I feel like he kind of acted like how a dad would react with their child.
Yeah.
Like just, well, let me rephrase. A calm dad. So like, just kind of.
We're calm.
Yeah. It depends.
I'll bring your kids in here, Adrian. Let's find out. Let's see how true that is.
Never mind.
Yeah, it's just kind of deep disappointment.
Yeah.
Because obviously I would assume in Jesus's mind, he's forgiven for what he's doing because he does not know what he's doing is bad, or in his head it's the right thing to do, whatever. But there's still that sense of disappointment as of like, I'm your father, I'm trying to teach you the way, and you do this.
Yeah. And like in the last chapter when Peter was talking about how he was ready to go up with Jesus and Jesus told him you're not ready, it's like it's revealing here that he really wasn't. Like if he was willing to react that way and feel disrespected in a way, then he's not really showing the true character of Jesus, and he's far from ready to go up with him, And so with that, we'll go on to verse 12.
Wait, can I point out
Oh,
one
yeah,
thing?
of course,
Really
of
quick?
course.
Point out one thing. I think what's interesting, right, and to this point of what Jesus is in control, verse 5 and 6, right, the response that Jesus gives is, I am he, right? He doesn't call himself Jesus, doesn't call himself the Son of Man, he calls himself I am he, right? In Exodus, if y'all remember, when Moses and God, the burning bush, what does
Okay.
God call himself?
I
I am he, the I am, right? And remember that John is a writer, whoever wrote the Gospel of John, wants to prove that Jesus is God. He's like writing to make sure that Jesus is God. And so even in the way that the writing, like that Jesus responds, he's asserting in this moment where the safe space has been broken, where he's about to die, where Peter's gonna cut off a dude's ear, like Jesus is still saying like, I am God. Like in this moment when everything is about to break loose, I'm still God. And I think particularly in just recent, like in the last week with things happening with family and just all that, like remembering that Jesus is God and not an abstract concept, right? That God is not something out there that we have no way of knowing that God, right? Like Jesus is God. And if you know Jesus, then you know the creator of the world. Like you know the God that created the heavens and the earth, the God that's coming back. And that's such a profound reminder, especially when things are changing, when things are going on. Like Jesus says, like, in the next chapter of your life, like, I am still God.
It's something so hard to grasp your mind around, to be honest. Like for me, just to think that like nothing, like none of this would be here if it weren't for him, and that we have a whole book just like of people, their records of him, and it's like insane to think about. Like when you sit there and actually just like sometimes I just be sitting down and I be like feel like I'm in a simulation, like like and like I don't know, I just think I'm like not moving, I'm just thinking. And that's how I feel sometimes when I'm reading this. It's just hard to grasp. But yeah. But we'll move on to verse 12, and then we'll stop at 24. Who was the last one to read?
24.
Your last one? So
My
JJ.
turn, all right. Then the company of soldiers, the commander, and the Jewish officials arrested Jesus and tied him up.
Oh my. First they took him to Annas, since he was the father-in-law of Caiaphas, the high priest at the time.
Caiaphas was the one who had told the other Jewish leaders, "It's better that one man should die for the people."
And Simon Peter followed Jesus, and so did another disciple. That disciple was known up unto the high priest, and went in with Jesus into the place of the high priest.
But Peter stood at the door outside. Then the other disciple, who was known to the high priest, went out and spoke to her who kept the door, and brought Peter in.
Then the servant girl, who was the doorkeeper, said to Peter, "You aren't one of this man's disciples too, are you?" "I am not," he said.
Because it was cold, the household servants and the guards had made a charcoal fire. They stood around it, warming themselves, and Peter stood with them, warming himself.
Inside, the high priest began asking Jesus about his followers and what he had been teaching them.
Jesus answered him, "I spake openly in the world. I never taught in the synagogues and in the temple, whether the Jews always resort, and in secret have I said nothing."
Why do you ask me? Ask those who have heard me what I said to them. Indeed, they know what I said.
When he had said these things, one of the officials standing by slapped Jesus, saying, "Is this the way you answer the high priest?"
Jesus replied, "If I said anything wrong, you must prove it. But if I'm speaking the truth, why are you beating me?"
Then Annas bound Jesus and sent him to Caiaphas, the high priest.
So I actually have a question that I feel like one of you might be able to answer, Adrian, Gus, or JJ, or anybody here. So Caiaphas, right? Okay, so he was the one who had said that it's better that he die instead of everybody else, like all the other people dying. Who is he referring to? Like the Jews?
What is it, 14?
Yeah. 14.
What is your version? How does y'all's version write that? Verse 14.
Caiaphas was the one who had told the other Jewish leaders, "It's better that one man should die for the people."
For the people.
Because to me it seems like part of me is like maybe he had an understanding of Jesus's like whole goal of dying on the cross, but then again it wouldn't add up because he was as much as a sinner as the next guy. So like, and they obviously didn't have much of an understanding.
I think they were looking at it more of like from a sacrificial standpoint. Like not really the sentiment behind being put on the cross, but kind of just.
So that's but then that leads to my question is like who would he be sacrificing for? In the eyes of Caiaphas, who would he be sacrificing for? That's what I'm confused on. I don't really understand. Gus, you know?
I'm not even sure where you're at. I'm sorry.
Oh.
I think when he says,
What verse again?
14.
I think when he says, better for one man to die than the whole people, I think he's talking with the whole nation of Jews.
Yeah.
Because I think he didn't want Jesus, or like what they thought that Jesus would start rebel against the Rome.
Yeah.
So I think that he didn't want Rome interfering and wiping their whole nation out.
So like kill leader rather than the army kind of ordeal.
Like
Okay.
kill what's starting it, so nothing happens.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah, I think that makes a lot of sense.
All right. So, as we continue reading, we see that Annas had slapped Jesus. What do y'all think about that? That's. What do you think, Robyn?
That, I don't know.
Why do you think he did it?
Because he felt maybe Jesus was disrespecting him, but because don't know how to explain it. Like, I guess Jesus knows that he's bigger than everything else, and that the other people don't, maybe not like that Jesus has more authority over them.
And I would argue that he didn't even like make it in a way known that like he was bigger than all of them.
Yeah.
Like he was even like he was just telling them to ask the people who have like basically like testimonies. Like he didn't even want to speak for himself. He didn't want to brag about himself or anything. Adrian,
Lincoln's on. He says, "Yo,"
what's up, Link?
and
Why you not
slapped
here?
Jesus. He was jealous, and envied him.
Yeah.
Jealous.
That could be true.
Lincoln, why aren't you here?
I called you, bro.
And he's calling you out, man. But yeah, so any other thoughts on this chapter or?
Yeah, I think what's interesting is like what we're seeing is like Jesus is. I preached this one time. Like what we're seeing at the when we're leading to the crucifixion, is like, the world that Jesus has built up around him starts to crumble, right? Like his friend Simon Peter has betrayed him, because of course he did, right? And so like he's Jesus is a Jew, right? And so his own religion, right? The people, it's like if Pastor Eliab had once like slapped you and like called, right? Like this is your church. If I told him we were wrong. If Eliab's watching this, I know you wouldn't ever do that. But like for the purpose of this illustration, right? Like Jesus' entire world is starting to fall apart, right? He has no more friends. They've all abandoned him. His religion has called him a traitor, right? Like he has no one. He is by himself. And he's having to go through this. And I think, if anything, well, I think you're all right about the slap. Like, it's about power. It's about jealousy. And it's also just a reminder. I think it's just like really like a slap in the face to Jesus, like a literal one, but also a like metaphorical one, that he has no one. Like he is in this moment completely at the mercy of the Jews, of the Romans, of the crowd, and also of his friends.
I love that. I'm gonna have to write that down for a future sermon. I'm not gonna lie.
There you go.
I'll credit you. That's beautiful, man.
Cite me. Put in your papers, dude.
Works cited.
There you go. Bibliography.
You're giving me flashbacks, please.
It's 7:27. There you go.
Huh?
At 7:27 p.m., bro.
All right. So I could cite it in the. All right, thank you. All right. So we'll continue from. We'll go from 25 to. We'll go to 38. And your turn. Okay, cool.
And Simon Peter stood and warmed himself. They said therefore unto him, Art not thou also one of his disciples? He denied it, and said, I am not.
One of the servants of the high priest, a relative of him, whose ear Peter cut off, said, Did I not see you in the garden with him?
Peter denied it again. Immediately a rooster crowed.
Jesus' trial before Caiaphas ended in the early hours of the morning. Then he was taken to the headquarters of the Roman governor. His accusers didn't go inside because it would defile them, and they wouldn't be allowed to celebrate the Passover.
So Pilate, the governor, went out to them and asked, What is your charge against this man?
They answered and said unto him, If he were not a malefactor, we would not have delivered him up unto thee.
Then Pilate said to them, You take him and judge him according to your law. Therefore the Jews said to him, It is not lawful for us to put anyone to death.
They said this so that Jesus' words might be fulfilled, indicating what kind of death he was going to die.
33. Then Pilate went back to his headquarters and called for Jesus to be brought to him. Are you the king of the Jews? He asked him.
Jesus replied, Is this your own question, or did others tell you about me?
Pilate answered, I am a Jew. Thy own nation and a chief priest have delivered thee unto me. What hast thou done?
Jesus answered, My kingdom is not of this world. If my kingdom were of this world, my servants would fight, so that I should not be delivered to the Jews. But now my kingdom is not from here.
You are a king then, Pilate asked. You say that I'm a king, Jesus replied. I was born for this, and I have come into the world for this, to testify to the truth. Everyone who is the truth listens to my voice.
What is the truth? Pilate asked. Then he went out again to the people and told them, he is not guilty of any crime. We'll continue because there's only 2 more verses left. Yeah.
Wait, you're on 38?
Yeah, so 39.
But you have a custom of asking me to release one prisoner each year at Passover. Would you like me to release this King of the Jews?
Then cried they all again, saying, Not this man, but Barabbas. Now Barabbas was a robber.
Alright, so this was heavy. There was a lot
Yeah.
going on. So we'll go back to 25 when Peter had denied him. Why do you guys think Peter denied him?
To protect himself.
To protect himself?
Yeah.
Oh yeah.
As she's saying, it's kind of like a self-preservation.
Yeah.
But at the time, when they were, well, they technically still are friends. But when they weren't friends, one who kind of betrayed the other, he was a man of Jesus' word and tried to stick to it. But at this time, he's completely against it.
Yeah.
And I feel like he just lost his belief.
So my Bible tells me that it was a cold night and that they were around the fire trying to get warm. So there was like a comfortability about it, right?
Mm-hmm.
And so Peter had denied knowing Jesus just to be in this comfortable spot and be with these people that even though he knew were in the wrong, he had felt comfortable. And I think that's like many times in my life I'm around people where I'm just like I'm comfortable. I feel comfortable, but even though I know it's wrong in the back of my head, I'm telling myself this isn't right. I refuse to leave because it's just something so known to me and something so like
Familiar.
yeah, so familiar, and so it's really hard to leave from that. And so I understand Peter 100% where he's coming from, you know? What do you think, JJ? Oh, what do you say?
I was just gonna comment. It's like a fear of the unknown.
Yeah, exactly.
like, moving to another place that you've like never been to.
Exactly.
Yeah, I think I'm looking to make sure that I'm right, but I'm pretty sure that all 4 Gospels actually have that detail about Peter being at least sitting down or being around people.
Yeah.
I think it's interesting, right? Because the 4 Gospels have different ways of telling the story. But when they agree on one thing, that's a pretty important part when they agree on something. But like I think what you're saying is so important, right? Is how easy, I mean, and it is easy, right? That when the choice is between the fire pit and freezing in the cold street, I think our human instinct is to choose the fire pit,
Yeah.
right? And so when we're charged with choosing, right, the Jesus way or the easy way, I think myself included, usually choose the easy way
Yeah.
because we feel better in the moment, right? But when we know what happens later, right? Peter
Yeah.
realizes his mistake and he,
Breaks
repents
down.
and breaks down, right? It's like even though the comfortability is for a moment, it never lasts. And I think that's true for so many things that, as just young people we have to deal with, right? That's so true for, like, in the moment, it's great, it's doing well. In the moment it's over,
Done.
yeah,
Temporary fix.
temporary fix.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I feel like with everything going on around him, he decided to just give into it and deny him.
And so, as we continue on, so there's this guy Pilate, the governor, who is basically going to charge him with death and to be crucified. What is his initial reaction? He kind of like pushes them away. It's like kind of like he doesn't want to be a part of it. What do you think about that?
I think he's doing what a judge should do. He's giving everyone the benefit of the doubt. I mean, like, what did this man do? What is he really doing? Why are you persecuting him for possibly no crime? But as you were saying, he's going into the comfortability also, while still sort of sticking to his values. For example, when he says that we will not put somebody to death. So I feel like it's kind of like a balancing act between his values but also his service to his people. So he's kind of in the middle of it all.
And then later on, you'll actually find out that he became victim to the comfortability, and he actually allows him to be killed because, well, we'll get into that next week, but yeah, so what do you think, JJ? I know your brain's cooking up.
Funny. I don't know, there's a few things, but from what we're talking about, what's really sticking out to me is this. Is what Pilate says in 31, and then what's going on. Pilate told them, "You take him and judge him according to your law." And the Jews respond, "It's not legal for us to put anyone to death." Right? So they know. Yeah, right. Like they, like the and right like and putting this right, like we understand that like these are some Jews, right? Not every Jew. Jesus was Jewish. He had Jewish followers, right? But like these certain, like the leaders of the Jewish people, they know that what they're doing is wrong, right? They know that it is against their, not even against God, like it is against their own laws, right? It's like, this is such a bad example, but it's like, sorry, Joe. It's like like if our president did something that was like instinctively, like he knew it was wrong and he still went to do it anyway.
Yeah.
Right? He I don't know, bombed a school. Like that's wrong. Oh garbage, right? But like if he, but he know, like they know it's wrong, right?
Yeah.
Like and they're still so what do, right? They don't abide by their own law, but for them, because they're so caught up in the purity of it and it's Passover, they want to be so pure with their own law. What do? They go to the Romans and they say, "Hey Romans, you all kill people. Can you all kill this guy for us?"
Murder
They're
by
trying to find
proxy.
Yeah.
Like,
Yeah, what'd you say?
they're trying to like cheat the system.
Yeah, they're trying to cheat the system.
What do you think, Josiah?
Well, they pretty much said everything.
They hit on them.
Yeah.
Any thoughts on that?
The system. I like that. Cheat the system. That's good.
They also at the end, it's kind of just, it's disheartening because obviously we know the context of Jesus. We know how important he is, how he loves everybody, how he's this I don't know if this is the correct word, but a vessel of God.
Yeah.
And at the end they're just like, we want Barabbas. He's like cooler.
Yeah.
It's just, they're kind of just taking away, what's the word? They're taking away the, I guess, the importance of the character that he is.
Yeah, I agree with you 100%. And so, JJ, you'll probably give a better explanation on who Barabbas is. I was gonna give a bootlegged one, but you can
give the bootleg.
No. I'd rather hear your explanation on
So
who
let's
he
start
is.
with this, right? This was a weird topic in my New Testament class. If all of you like read, like let's go around and read what our versions calls him in 40, right?
Okay.
Because our versions probably say something a little different. So mine says this: "Now Barabbas was a revolutionary," and there's a footnote that says robber. Right? So what does y'all say?
Mine just says Barabbas was a revolutionary.
Revolutionary.
It just
Same.
cuts it.
What do you say?
Robber.
Robber.
Yeah, it was a robber.
Some others say bandit. Some others will say thief. Right?
So this guy was like no good at all.
I mean, yeah. What we understand from this, right? Barabbas is sentenced to death through crucifixion, right? Like there is no trial for this guy anymore. Like he will be if Jesus hadn't been brought forward. Like Barabbas was going to be crucified.
Yeah.
Crucifixion was not something that was like, oh, you stole a loaf of bread, let's nail you to a cross. The Roman Empire reserved crucifixion for people that were treasonous against the Roman Empire. So if you were trying to like kill a governor, if you were trying to start a revolution, if you were trying to undermine Rome's authority, then you were sentenced to crucifixion.
No, it's like they're asserting their dominance, kind of. They're like, oh, this is what's gonna happen when you try against us. It's like a scare tactic.
Exactly.
That's absolutely horrible.
Oh.
I mean, you would have, and this is like historically, Rome would leave out the bodies on the crosses, right? And so that when people walked into cities, you would see all of the people that had been crucified, so that you would know that if you were treasonous against Rome, this is what happened to you.
So knowing that they're gonna do that to We should save that for next week, huh?
Next
that
week.
discussion.
To Barabbas, yeah.
Well, yeah, okay. So,
Yeah.
so a little bit further before, Jesus in 36, he says, Jesus answered, "My kingdom is not an earthly kingdom. If it were, my followers would fight to keep me from being handed over to the Jewish leaders. But my kingdom is not of this world." So this to me is like, this hits home because I'm like, in the past few months, I've been really trying to portray Jesus' character and be like just a like people would say that they could step over me and I'm just passive and like it's just me trying to like show the love of Jesus. And then recently I have been snapping back at people and I've been falling back into what other people would think is like, oh, okay, he's tough now. And like, even though I've been falling back into that, I don't feel right at all. And so it's like I gotta choose whether I'll portray the kingdom of Jesus or portray the kingdom of this world of Satan. And it's really hard. It's really hard for me. So I've been really going through that. And yeah.
I feel like representing God is really hard. It's like, because I feel like everyone is always, as a Christian, everyone's out to get you. Like, you mess up,
Yeah.
you do this one little thing. Oh, you're not even like really Christian.
Yeah.
Oh, you do all this. But it's like they forget that we're human too. And then I don't know. I guess I get what you're saying a lot. Like, it's just hard when you have all these voices and
Yeah.
you're just trying to show like love and you're just trying to represent God and what you're working for. But like a lot of people don't understand our battles. Like, they don't understand what we think, what we're trying to overcome. Like, they just see like your outside character when God's working through your heart out. Like, he's not focused on your actions. He's transforming your heart, and that's what changes like your actions. I don't know. It's hard to be misunderstood, and I feel like that's what shows here. Like, everyone thinks so negatively about God, and he knows that he's misunderstood, and he's still like confident in like saying like he is the truth and that his world, what is it, his kingdom is not from this world. Just like if it was, like, they would fight. And so our battles aren't from this world. It's like spiritual battles. I don't know. I just feel like it says a lot here.
Amen. And you might get a kick out of this. The whole baseball season, all my teammates would say, "Oh, that's not very reflecting revive of you."
My friends
so
tell me
annoyed.
that all the time. It's not very godly.
It's on a
of you. It's
bracelet,
not
bro.
Make a shirt out of
That's
that.
good.
Oh, Lord.
Go meet your friends.
Get the
That's
merch
good.
going.
No.
Hey, we're going worldwide. We're going global now.
T-shirts, hoodies, cups,
Bro,
mugs.
You're gonna have that on
Enjoy
Kanye,
it,
bro.
guys.
That's very reflective.
I love it.
Get a Yeezy collab up in here.
That's some.
That means they're paying attention.
Yeah.
There you go.
But yeah, recently I have been. So I asked for prayer actually from everyone because I've been struggling with that, and it's like a constant battle inside my mind.
Well, think about it. Even then, even in this chapter, you learn, despite what he's gonna endure, what he's gonna go through, when everyone does what they're gonna do to him, he still remains honest. You know, he's still assertive. He still cuts to the truth, regardless of someone takes it. You know what I mean? And that takes a lot of courage. You know, and I commend you guys for trying really hard, especially in school. You know, to navigate those waters, if you will, right? Because it still happens when you're an adult. It doesn't change.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? But, oftentimes, he always says, be of good courage, no fear, no fear. You know what I mean? And eventually he will stand by you, and eventually, this very reflect and revive of you, it's hitting them in some place.
Yes.
So it's working. That's God working right there.
Yeah, and I need to figure out what's the difference between like being passive yet telling the truth and not allowing people to like say whatever they want, or just like feeding into their foolishness and like being a part of it. I really have to work on deciphering the difference and knowing when to stop and when to.
But by no means do you take any abuse, though.
Yeah.
That's a different story. That's when they cross the line right there. And that's when you gotta say, hey, enough's enough.
Mm-hmm.
I think the way to do that, because obviously people say be God-like, be like God, try to be like him, obviously. I think the way to do that would just be to have exerting confidence in yourself, to where, of course, people are going to say things, they're going to try to put you down, they're going to not agree with you, or they're going to say something mean. but at the same time to be confident in your beliefs, that you can be passive, but also stand up for yourself when necessary.
Yeah.
Your struggle reminds me of 2 Timothy 4, 2 and 3, which leads all the way to 7. Preach the word, be ready in season and out of season. Convince, rebuke, exhort with all long-suffering and teaching. For the time will come when they will not endure sound doctrine, but according to their own desires, because they have itching ears, they will heap upon for themselves their teachers. And then it tells you, fight the good fight, finish that race, keep the faith. It's a struggle.
Yeah, most definitely. And so one thing as we were talking, I was thinking about, he says that his kingdom is not an earthly kingdom, right? And then you went on to say that he felt kind of abandoned. So like at this point, like it doesn't even seem like he has a kingdom to rely on, or a kingdom to even back him up or prove that he is who he says he is, you know?
Preach it, Pastor.
So at what does he rely on at that point? Like what's his kingdom? What can he rely on? What do you think? What do you think, Josiah? I haven't heard from you in a little bit.
Well, what I think that when he's going through all of this, like you guys said, that he doesn't have a kingdom anyone to go to, but I think he's holding on to the thought of what he's going to do for us, how he's going to save us, that he's doing it for us to save us so we can go to heaven with him. That's what I think that's keeping him in this game.
Yeah. And like one thing I was thinking about is like God was like he just looked up to God and allowed him to take full control, and he allowed him to work through him and speak through him, even though he had felt like lonely and abandoned. And I think we can all really learn from that. A lot of times in my life, there's times where I'm lonely or I feel like I'm in this by myself, yet I can look up to God and understand that it's part of his will, and what has to be done has to be done, you know? And I'm only 17, I haven't even gone through no real problems yet, so.
Honestly.
So I'm in for a heck of a future.
Adulting is hard, man.
Yep. You're on stage 2? Stage 1.5?
I don't want to talk about it.
Oh, your midlife crisis?
Bro, I've had like 3 already, dude.
Oh my gosh.
Oh, man.
Pre-life crisis.
It's official, Gus. We're old.
I'm curious what you all think about this question that Pilate asks, and then we don't get Jesus' answer, right? What is truth?
Mm.
Right? There's, and I'll preface this by saying there's usually 2 ways that we read that, like in scholarship, and that's like he's actually genuinely curious, or he's mocking him.
Yeah.
Which one do you all think it is? What do you think Pilate's doing?
Oh, you gonna say something?
Oh, I think he's mocking.
Yeah.
Because, of course, he could be genuine,
Yeah.
but at the same time, he's not really being genuine about the way he's addressing Jesus. And he's more treating him as a persecutee, not as, I guess not as a person, but more of like an outcast or a kind of revolutionary.
I don't know. I feel like he's actually curious, cause like he says I find no fault in him at all. Like he's giving him the benefit of the doubt at first until he like decides to give in. So I feel like he's genuinely curious and actually like is invested. But I don't know if I'm just seeing the good in that one.
That's interesting.
So I actually have a different point of view. I think he's mocking him. I was thinking the same exact thing. I was like, okay, well maybe not. But he tried to hand them back over to the Jews. He tried to just give it to them and not say any word, even though he knows he have complete authority over the Jews, and they will literally do whatever he says. So, but he doesn't care enough to do anything. He's like, okay, you could take him, do whatever you want with him. Don't put this on me.
What if he wants to like please his kingdom, his people?
Yeah.
So he like lets them give control. Like maybe he in his mind he like believes Jesus and he doesn't want to, but since everyone's telling him all these things, he wants to please them. So he's just like, you do it, like, don't involve me, you know?
Yeah.
I don't know, I think that's how I see it.
That makes sense. JJ, you brought the question up, and
Yeah, I got one more. I got one more. What do you
Well,
think?
like you were saying, like, I think that, how would I say it? How, like, he wanted to give it to them. I think that he didn't want to do the wrong thing. And just in case that he didn't know that he was the Son of God, let's just say he didn't know that, and which he is, if he killed him, he didn't want his blood to be on his hands. So he didn't want people to say, "Oh, you killed God," and
Yeah.
it's his fault. But
That's actually a great point.
Yeah.
and another theory I think is he with the people if he didn't, they're gonna blame him, and he most likely he's gonna get his position taken away from him and be replaced. So at this point, I think he's stuck in what he should do. Like he doesn't know what he should do. What he should do yet.
I never thought about it like that, honestly.
No, y'all are. I mean, this is like the work of like scholars, man. It's just talking about what this means. I mean, I don't have an answer. I think my honest, I don't have an answer to that. I think it's funny, right? Because the truth is right in front of him, right? Like Jesus is right in front of him, and he just doesn't get it, right?
Yeah.
If he's curious, he doesn't. He's like not understanding the answers, right? And he's trying. He's like, what? So like, if we take that, right? He's curious. He's like, okay, Jesus says, "My kingdom's not of this world," and he's like, "Well, are you a king?" Then Jesus has to answer it. So like, if he's curious, he's just not getting it, right? If he's mocking him, he's doing a really he's asking some pretty profound questions to mock this guy, right? Like, so you're a king? Like, what is the truth, right? Like, either way you look at this, like,
Gaslighting.
the king, dude, like exactly, like the king, the truth, it is right in front of him, right? And he has all the power in the world, and he just doesn't get it.
He's blinded by darkness.
He's just blind.
Yeah.
He just can't see. And it reminded me, this is a little bit off topic, but also like when we're in positions of power, right? Like in a church, in our schools, right? Like sometimes we have to make these like kind of these decisions too, right? Like when we're entrusted to be leaders, like y'all are here doing this, right? Like y'all are making choices to be here and to like lead out this, right? But like Gus gets on the pulpit, right? Like that's a choice that, like that's a position of power, right? And so like we all have to be careful to not be blind just because we are entrusted to do something, right? Just because we have a little bit of authority for a moment, like not to be blind to people suffering in front of us.
One thing that came to my mind is, so the Romans, they had no like, they weren't what's it called? They didn't believe in Jesus, right? They believed in many gods and whatnot.
Right.
So can you really blame them? Like the Jews, they knew like this was supposedly their Jesus, their God, and he was standing right in front of them. They were just so stupid and didn't understand. But the Romans, they had like no clue. So like, can there be like, you think Jesus had like a moment of like how do I say it? Well, I guess you say mercy, which then ties to his character. He's merciful. So I don't know. It just came to my mind. I don't know.
That's a good point.
You understand my question, or I don't even think I understand my
That's
question.
the live audience. That's what I do when I don't get
Oh.
it. Like, what do you all think?
What do you think?
Wait, I don't
Robyn.
get the question.
Yeah, I don't get the question either, huh?
It's me.
No, yeah, you. Oh, Gus. Gus.
What?
So, do you understand what I was trying to say, or sort of, kind of, not really?
Well, you know, I'm not trying to get too far off, but
Yeah.
listening to what you're saying, it just reminds me that, you know, when you look at the other Gospels, Matthew, Mark, and Luke, at this moment when he's in front of Pilate, the Gospels refer that, or strongly suggest that he doesn't say much.
Yeah.
He's very silent.
Jesus?
In many of these things. And it's putting pressure on Pilate to figure out how do I satisfy it. And speaking about you, and when you talk about being in leadership, do we take the stance where we might offend somebody or might offend the multitudes maybe? Or do we cave into the easier thing and surrender to Christ? Surrender his message to the wolves, so to speak.
Yeah. And so
Right,
Yeah.
and so he had an opportunity to do the right thing, and what does he do? Well, we're going to find out, right?
Yeah, and part of me, like I don't even think he understand how important Jesus was, or who he was, like what multitude of like power he had, and the importance of what he had just done. So I think there's room for forgiveness there, you know.
And remind ourselves, I think he's starting to understand, because remember, in a couple of the Gospels, I think his wife even tells
Yeah.
him, hey, look, I've been having dreams about this dude. You know, things are,
That's not
you know, this is not right. There's something about him.
Yeah.
So I think Pilate is tasting something. He's, yeah.
Not only that, you know, when you read through all this, you kind of have a feeling Pilate is going through his own governing issues, his own area. You know, he's having his struggles, so he's trying to appease not only, you know, the Jews, so he doesn't have to deal with them, but then he's got someone to, what's the word?
Report to?
He's got to report to somebody too, and if he's not doing his job, then
Yeah.
he's out of there.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? So he's again, it's balancing that fine line, and it's like, well, what should I do? You know what I mean? So he's just trying to, you know, take care of himself too in the process.
So, is it a front to like get rid of the situation, just throw it all away, or is it like he can feel the Spirit moving through his heart? That's a question. I feel like
That's a question we all have to deal with.
Yeah.
Quite often we have that conviction
Yeah.
for many things.
I think he knows what's right. I think it's mentally going through his head that he knows it's right. Like, his brain's working. He has the little walkie thing. He's transporting brain cells.
Yeah, I feel like not mentally, but like spiritually. Even though he doesn't believe in God and he's not like his spirit doesn't dwell with him.
Yeah.
I feel like he still knows. Like God can still talk to him, and he still has a part of his feeling that knows it's wrong. But due to him not like being in the Word and loving God, he still goes with the wrong choice. And I feel like he feels guilty. Like I don't know. I feel like he had a lot of guilt too, because a part of him felt like that.
Yeah, you got to see it like from a morality standpoint too. Like he most definitely, there has to be at least an ounce in his body that kind of said, you know, this isn't the right thing to do. There was like literally no reasoning. They're just like, oh,
Yeah.
they just threw out information and okay, we'll kill him off that. So there's really no like true evidence for him to be killed, and then to replace him with a man who has done so wrong, it's just absolutely absurd, to be honest.
I find no grounds for charging him.
Exactly.
Especially.
I'm sorry, go ahead.
Oh, especially like since God, the way he's responding, like since he's so calm and I feel like he's confident too.
Yeah.
I feel like he might also be like he's confident that he's king, so like it might make him also believe that he might is king. Yeah.
And you had a comment from Lincoln. He thinks that Pilate didn't know who God and the devil were. He wasn't able to decipher the two, which led to his choice to kill him.
Yeah.
I think it's funny, right, that I think what you said earlier was really important, right? Like Pilate, regardless of if Pilate believes that Jesus is the Christ, put all that aside, right? Because you're right. Like this is a Roman dude. Like he's a governor. He has to go to like he's a Roman guy, right? So let's work on the assumption that Pilate doesn't like know that Jesus is the Christ. Pilate says a lot that Jesus is innocent. Right? Like, it is a constant theme in 18 that Jesus has done nothing wrong. And so Pilate never, even at the end of, and you'll all get to it later, but like at the end of 18, Pilate still doesn't condemn him to death. Who's the one that does it? It's the crowd.
Yeah.
Right?
The
It's the mob. The mob is the one that says, we want Barabbas. Pilate never like doesn't actually say, like, at least in 18 doesn't say like we're going to like put him to death. It's the crowd. So like I think Pilate like he doesn't believe in Christ. I think that's fair. He has to know. Like and he's like and so he's like leadership. He's like I don't know what to do. Let's blame it on somebody else. Hey crowd, what do you think? Right? But like isn't that it's so easy to do, right? It's like when we don't trust ourselves to make a decision, we don't trust God to help us make a decision. We don't trust the things around us, the very real like thing in front of us that's telling us that this is right. Well, we'll just put it off. That's somebody else. That's somebody else's fault. Like that's not my problem.
And
one other thing, and it's in line with what you're saying. Have we stopped to think? Did Pilate give the other three, Barabbas and the other two thieves, the insurrectionists, whatever you may call them, how much audience did he give them? Remember, their trials had already occurred. Their things, just as the Jews have, the Romans have their system of judicial, constraint, what have you. So, how much audience did he give them? Here he is getting Jesus' audience. I mean, he's right up against, he's in the judge's chambers, not even in front of, his peers or what have you. Well, in front of peers, but not this is such a farce that even the Roman leader understood what was going on. Yeah, he knew this is something big. This was bigger than Barabbas. This was bigger than the other two. But you're right. He may not quite understand fully how big this was. But there's a sense there. There's a sense that this isn't right.
And as we're closing up, one thing that stuck out to me is that literally a couple verses later, the same decision had been made. Cephas has said that it's better that one person die than for a whole bunch of people to die, right? And you see Pilate making the same exact decision when he's lost. And so that's like, at that point, it's like where your heart is. Like, he doesn't know, he doesn't have a stability, so he just leans on the side that has more pulling power. And in our life, it's going to be really difficult to make that decision as well. So we're either going to fall like the person behind us did, like Cephas, or you'll have to make the just decision, you know?
Yeah. I mean, the last thing I'll say, like, Pilate can stop this.
Yeah.
Right? And y'all will get to, like, much worse in 19, but, like, Pilate can stop it. Right? And I think exactly what you're saying is, like, we can stop, like, in the things that we're doing, like, going through, like, we also have the ability and the choice to stop. I mean, that's obviously difficult. Like, Pilate has a difficult choice. But in whatever decisions we have and whatever we're going through, like, we are, in a sense, Pilate. Like, we have the ability to make different choices and make better choices, right?
Is that why his name's Pilate?
I have no idea.
He can pilot his direction.
So you can pilot his direction. Put that on a shirt tag. That's good. No, that's right. Like, we have the ability, and that's what you're saying is, like, we all, like what you said earlier, is, like, it's so difficult, though, to, like, make those choices, but we still have the ability to make them. And at the end of the day, who do we blame for killing Jesus? The Romans? Pilate? Like, Pilate's the one that let this happen.
Yeah.
And, like, and as terrible as it sounds, like, when we make the wrong decisions, we're held accountable for them. We have to make do with what we have.
And I love the gospel showing so many different people with different decisions. Like, you're faced with, like, hundreds of people with each person have a different decision, a different situation and different outcomes, and it just shows you, like, the both worlds. What happens if you choose right? What happens if you choose wrong? And with that, any closing thoughts? No? I think it was a beautiful Bible study. And so we'll have somebody close with prayer. Any volunteers? Or all right, I'm thinking of a number 1 through 10. Go. Go.
7.
Go.
4.
Go.
6.
Here you go.
I've never done a prayer.
You can do it.
Just a conversation with God.
Alright. Hey God, what's up? I just pray that you lead us and those around us and those in the world to make smart and sound decisions that are true to themselves. Don't allow us not to lead our lives in a way that would lead to unhappiness and regret. Lead us towards the light in all of our paths. Amen.
Amen. Thank you all for joining us, and thank you everyone for the beautiful insight. We'll see you guys next week with John chapter 19. Dang. All right, we'll see you next week.